Australia has seen no less than 8 new car brands enter the Australian market in the past 12 months, all of which hail from China. This is on top of the existing Chinese manufacturers that have been operating in Australia for the last 15 years. Australia experienced decades of brand stability from well-known household names such as Ford, Toyota, Nissan and Mazda, brands from the US, Japan and Korea that we're all familiar with and knew the history of. But the paradigm is starting to shift. China has become by far the largest car market in the world. 30 million cars are made and sold within China every year. That's double the amount of cars made and sold in the US every year. China make more cars for their own country every year than we here in Australia, with a population of just 27 million, have actual people to drive them. And that's including if you had babies and kids trying to drive them as well. And to support that demand, you need a lot of car makers. So it's no surprise that they have a large automotive industry made up of a lot of brands. Up until now, a lot of these brands have produced cars purely for their own domestic market. This has created an extremely cutthroat and competitive automotive sales landscape in China, so brands are beginning to spread their wings and try their hand at selling their cars in new markets overseas. Brands that no one has ever heard of are starting to sell their cars in Australia. Deepal, Geely, Jaecoo, who are they? And what's their pedigree when it comes to manufacturing cars? Well, that's what we're going to discuss today on this episode of Beyond EV, your home for everything BYD. Hi everyone, David here from Beyond EV, and did you know that Beyond EV has channel memberships? If you're a regular here and want to show even more support, you can sign up as a Beyond EV member. Beyond EV members get a unique badge and also get early access to all Beyond EV videos. Press the join button below to find out more and consider signing up to be a Beyond EV member today. Now, in this video, I'm going to venture a little bit off the usual BYD related content I put out. In this episode, I'm going to go through and help you gain an understanding of all the new Chinese automotive brands coming to Australia right now. Now, this is BYD related, as BYD just happens to be one of those brands. We all know the backgrounds of the US and Japanese brands currently sold in Australia, and a lot of Chinese brands are coming to our shores and have been producing cars for just as long as they have, some for even longer. So what is their history in car making? Who owns them? And how are they all tied together? Well, by the end of this video, you should hopefully have answers to all of those questions. Now, just like brands from the US, a lot of Chinese automakers manufacture cars under different brand names. So this video is going to be broken down by parent company. And from there, I'll discuss what brands that parent company produces and the history of each parent company and brand. Now, to be clear, this is not a list of all Chinese brands. It is very, very far from it. This is just going to be a list of brands and makers that are already here in Australia or have already announced plans to come here in the near future. This means there are going to be some bigger and some well-known brands internationally that won't be on this list. Brands such as Li Auto, NIO and Aeon, as these brands have not made any announcements regarding the Australian market just yet. This list is in no particular order either, so let's get stuck into it and start off with our first Chinese automaker. I thought I'd start with Geely because they are by far the largest automotive group making inroads into Australia and are in control of a number of brands, some of which you may have already be familiar with and are household names, while others are only hitting our shores for the first time. Geely Automotive currently own the following brands that are already active in the Australian market. Brands such as Volvo, Polestar, Smart, Zeekr, and the self-named Geely brand. They also own the following brands that are currently available in other overseas markets and may or may not make their way here in the future. These brands include Lynk & Co, Riddara or Riddara, Proton, which is exclusive to Southeast Asian markets, Lotus, and LEVC, or the London Electric Vehicle Company. Zhejiang Geely Holding Group is a private Chinese mega conglomerate that was founded in 1986 by Li Shufu. Li Shufu and Geely started off as a refrigerator parts manufacturing business, and that would be their primary business for the next 8 years. It wasn't until 1994 when Geely acquired a failed state-owned motorcycling manufacturing firm and used it to develop and manufacture China's very first domestically made automotive scooter. In 2006, Geely bought a 20% stake in the British Manganese Bronze Holdings Company, the company responsible for the manufacturing of London's black cabs. In 2013, Manganese Bronze Holdings would enter administration, giving Geely the opportunity to fully acquire the remaining 80% and take full control of London's black cab manufacturing business. This business was then renamed into the London Electric Vehicle Company, with production resuming in Coventry. In 2009, after entering into administration, Geely also purchased a failing Australian transmission manufacturing firm, DSI International, who at the time were one of the world's largest automotive transmission manufacturers, producing automatic transmissions for the likes of Ford, Maserati, and SsangYong. Geely moved manufacturing of automotive transmissions from their Albury factory in New South Wales to existing Geely manufacturing plants in China. Geely-owned DSI International still has a presence here in Australia to this day, providing engineering and design services out of their offices in Melbourne. But it was in 2008 when Geely's big breakthrough came to be, as that was the year they purchased the Volvo brand from Ford Motor Company. The knowledge and expertise that the team from Volvo brought into the Geely group allowed them to learn new manufacturing techniques and technologies that made a huge advancement on their existing model. This in turn allowed them to revive Volvo from the ashes. Volvo was not fully absorbed into Geely at the time of purchase. Instead, Volvo was able to operate with relative autonomy as its own standalone brand. It was at this point when Geely's growth and acquisitions began to grow exponentially. In 2016, Geely developed and introduced the Lynk & Co brand to the German market in an effort to fill the gap between the entry-level Geely and premium-level Volvo brands. In 2017, Geely acquired a controlling stake in Lotus Cars, and later that year also purchased a controlling stake in Proton, the Malaysian car maker. 2017 was also the year that Geely would decide to spin off Polestar from Volvo. Polestar started life in 1996 in Sweden as a performance car tuning company. In 2015, it was purchased by Volvo to become the performance brand of Volvo. Think of what AMG is to Mercedes-Benz. Just 2 years later, Geely would pivot Polestar to be its own standalone brand that would focus entirely on offering electric cars manufactured out of China. 2021 saw the development of the Zeekr brand by Geely, offering premium electric vehicles. Zeekr itself would position itself as a separate company and list through an IPO on the New York Stock Exchange. In 2022, the Riddara brand was born, which will be known as Riddara in markets outside of China due to trademark oppositions. Riddara will focus entirely on the manufacturing of battery electric pickup utes. Riddara currently has one ute on offer, the Riddara RD6, which is currently for sale in China. But given the appetite for utes here in Australia, I can see the Riddara brand almost being a certainty to make its way here sometime in the future. Chery Automotive Holdings is a state-owned corporation headquartered and owned by the Wuhu municipal government. It was founded in 1997 by Wuhu government officials and started manufacturing their first cars in 1999, utilising a chassis that was licensed to them by SAIC, a European car manufacturer at the time that now falls under the Volkswagen Group. Chery is another company that formed 50-50 joint ventures with overseas makers looking to gain a foothold into the Chinese market. In 2012, Chery formed a joint venture with Jaguar Land Rover, and they were tasked with manufacturing Jaguar and Land Rover vehicles for the Chinese market. Chery have had a small presence in the Australian market for quite some time now, but only just recently picked up a decent slice of the market share with the introduction of the Chery Omoda and Chery Tiggo series of vehicles. The Omoda brand in particular is a sub-brand of Chery that is exclusively for the export market only. And in some markets, the Chery name is dropped completely and the vehicle is simply referred to as an Omoda. But here in Australia, the Chery brand remains. Another brand that Chery owns and is made exclusively for export markets is the Jaecoo brand, which we currently don't see here in Australia, and it's unlikely that we will. as cars under the Jaecoo brand are also available under the Chery brand in particular markets. One of those in particular is the Jaecoo J8, which is just a rebadged Chery Tiggo 9. So it would be my expectation that if Jaecoo was to introduce cars here in Australia, it would just be under the Chery brand name. But there is one brand that you might see hitting our shores soon from Chery's lineup, and that's their off-road brand, Jetour. Jetour is a relatively new brand, having only formed in 2018, and focuses on the production of plug-in hybrid crossover and off-road capable SUVs. Jetour vehicles are currently available in Central America and in some Southeast Asian markets, and I would expect them to be one of the next Chinese brands to hit our shores in Australia sometime in the near future. Leapmotor is the parent company of the Leapmotor brand that currently went on sale in Australia only just recently. Founded in 2017 by executives from the Dahua technology company, one of the world's largest specialists in video surveillance equipment. In fact, Dahua are one of the leading brands of surveillance cameras here in Australia today, and they are a common camera brand used in both commercial and residential video surveillance systems. In 2023, Stellantis, the group that currently owns the likes of Jeep, Fiat, Chrysler, Dodge and Ram, bought a 20% stake in Leapmotor, with plans to bring the brand to overseas markets. This is the case here in Australia, as Stellantis is the distributor for Leapmotor vehicles here in Australia. Leapmotor, as it stands, aims towards the entry to mid-level in EV offerings, providing low-cost EV vehicles to the masses. Leapmotor is currently the only brand that they operate under, and they currently only have one vehicle available for sale here in Australia, the Leapmotor C10, but may offer more vehicles in the future. JAC Motors is another Chinese automotive company to hit our shores from relative obscurity, and are a private automaker based in Hefei, China. JAC Motors started back in 1964 as the Hefei Jianghuai Automotive Factory, but changed their name to the Anhui Jianghuai Automotive Company in 1997, with the JAC abbreviation coming from that name change. JAC entered into an agreement with Hyundai to produce Hyundai's MPVs for the Chinese market in the early 2000s. It wasn't a joint venture in the true sense of the word, more a cooperation between the two companies. It wasn't until 2017 when JAC created ties with Volkswagen and entered into a joint venture with Volkswagen to produce electric cars for their SEAT brand for the Chinese market. It is one of the joint ventures where the overseas maker actually has a controlling share of the joint venture, with Volkswagen holding a 75% stake in the partnership. In 2020, Volkswagen's interest in JAC Motors went even deeper, as that is when they also acquired a 50% stake in JAC's parent company, JAC Holdings, effectively increasing their stake in their joint venture with JAC to 78%. JAC Motors was also the original OEM manufacturer for the brand NIO when they first started back in 2016. NIO isn't on its way to Australia just yet, but they are a well-known brand in China and internationally, as NIO is the brand that makes electric vehicles with swappable batteries, and invested in a large network of battery swapping stations across China. NIO acquired their production facilities from JAC back in 2023 and now operate completely independent of JAC. JAC Motors primarily focuses on the production of SUVs, MPVs and pickup utes, and their first vehicle to hit the Australian shores just recently was the JAC T9 Ute. But there are plans and rumours that JAC will be bringing more of their upmarket EVs to Australia in the near future. Here's one that you probably never heard of, but will be making its way to Australia very soon, and that is Skywell. Skywell is the new energy vehicle manufacturing arm of a coach bus manufacturing business that started off in the year 2000 as the Nanjing Golden Dragon Bus Company. But today, it's the subsidiary of a publicly traded company called the Skyworth Group and can be bought on both the Shenzhen and Hong Kong stock exchanges. It is a bit of a confusing setup, but in China, Skyworth Group manufactures and sells cars under both the Skyworth and Skywell brands. But at this stage, only the Skywell brand will be heading to Australia, with the Skywell ET5 looking to be the first entrant into the market. CHANGAN is a name you may not have heard of, but they are in fact the third largest automotive manufacturer in China behind BYD and Geely Group, and are the 11th highest selling car manufacturer worldwide, ahead of the likes of BMW, Mercedes-Benz and Mazda. They don't sell cars under their CHANGAN name here in Australia, but you would have heard of one of their sub-brands, Deepal, which was recently introduced to the Australian market. CHANGAN is a Chinese state-owned automotive manufacturer with a very long history that dates back as far back as 1862, where the company was known as the Shanghai Foreign Gun Bureau and started off as a military supply and arms manufacturing company. In 1959, the military supply factory was repurposed to manufacture military vehicles, starting off with the Changjiang Type 46 Jeep, and CHANGAN Auto, as we know it today, was born. CHANGAN was one of the major players in China's progression from the 80s to the 2000s as automotive manufacturing powerhouses, being one of the main automotive companies to form 50-50 joint ventures with overseas manufacturers looking to sell cars into the Chinese market. This started in 1984 with a 50-50 joint venture with Suzuki, and culminated with the formation of CHANGAN Ford and CHANGAN Mazda, two separate 50-50 joint ventures that are responsible for the production of Ford and Mazda branded vehicles sold in China. CHANGAN produce cars under a number of different brands in China, and this is alongside their existing joint venture partnerships, but so far only one has made it to Australian shores, and that one is Deepal. Deepal is CHANGAN's electric vehicle brand, and they only just recently hit Australian shores with the introduction of the Deepal S07. But this isn't their only EV brand. CHANGAN also own Avatr, their premium EV brand. No news yet as to whether or not Avatr will make its way to Australia, but I would say that they would come sometime in the future. Great Wall Motor, or as it's currently known, GWM, are a well-known Chinese brand that has been operating in Australia for over a decade now. They offer vehicles under a number of different brands over in China, but here in Australia, they all fall under the GWM brand. GWM was formed in 1984 as a small car manufacturer partly owned by the state of Hebei, but just 14 years later became fully privatised and went public on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange in 2003. GWM specialise in particular in manufacturing SUVs and pickup utility vehicles, the perfect mix for the Australian market, as they are the two most hotly contested segments for private buyers here. So you would think that Aussies would be all over them, right? Well, not so much. When GWM entered the Australian market in 2009, it wasn't long before reports of quality issues, complaints and even recalls began to plague the reputation of GWM vehicles. And dare I say it out loud, those early GWM vehicles may have been the catalyst of the ongoing negative sentiment towards Chinese-made vehicles still held by certain cohorts in Australia even today. But times have changed. GWM have battled on, and their cars today are a long ways away from what they were 10 years ago. A similar rags to riches story that could be compared with the likes of the Korean marques Hyundai and Kia when they first entered the Australian market, and where they've come to today. GWM has moved around their product matrix and branding lineup over the years, breaking off particular vehicles into their own sub-brands. These separated brands still exist in the Chinese domestic market, but it appears that in overseas markets, these vehicles will be consolidated again just under the GWM name banner. GWM's brands were aimed at different market segments, and these included Haval, which focused on crossover SUVs, Tank, which focused on off-road SUVs, Poer, which focused on pickup trucks and utes, and Aura, which focused on small hatchbacks. In Australia, these cars are all just sold under the GWM brand and are named in ways such as GWM Haval Jolion, the GWM Tank 300, and the GWM Aura. But in China, the GWM name takes a back seat, and these cars would just be called the Haval Jolion, Tank 300, or the Aura Good Cat. Yes, the Aura cars in China are named after cats. The Poer brand is the only one that didn't make it to the Australian shores, at least by name, but it has by logo. That Q-looking symbol you find on the front on GWM Canon utes, that's actually a letter P, and it is the Poer logo. GWM didn't remove it or change it for overseas markets, so their cars here will still feature that logo. Xpeng is a privately owned standalone brand that was founded in 2014 by Henry Jia and He Tao, both of which were former executives of GAC Auto, which is currently the fourth largest manufacturer of EVs in China. But GAC Auto themselves currently have no plans to introduce vehicles into Australia at this moment. They founded Xpeng with the backing of some very wealthy initial investors. These included He Xiaopeng, who was a former executive at Alibaba, and of which the name Xpeng is actually named after, and Lai Jun, the founder of Xiaomi. With former executives of both Xiaomi and Alibaba on the books, Xpeng's focus has always been on driving technology. Their goal? To produce highly advanced self-driving vehicles. With this in mind, they managed to raise a lot of capital across numerous funding rounds in their early years, culminating in 2023 with the Volkswagen Group buying a 5% share in the business. Following their investment, Xpeng and Volkswagen signed a technology cooperation and joint development agreement on platform and software. Xpeng vehicles use CATL battery cells. CATL are the world's largest manufacturer of lithium-ion batteries, ahead of BYD, who are the world's second largest. And in China, these batteries can be charged with Xpeng's own extensive fast charging network consisting of over 1,000 charging sites across China. Xpeng owners in China also have the benefit of receiving free fast charging on Xpeng fast chargers for life. So it's actually possible in China to buy an Xpeng over there and potentially not pay a single cent to operate it for the life of the vehicle. Shanghai Automotive Industry Corporation is currently the largest state-owned automotive manufacturer in China. Together with CHANGAN, they top the pile of the big four Chinese state-owned automotive companies, which also consists of FAW Motor and Dongfeng Corporation. SAIC's automotive history dates back to the 1940s and is one of the original Chinese automakers to form 50-50 joint ventures with overseas makers in the 1980s. SAIC in particular signed joint venture partnerships with Volkswagen in 1984 and then with General Motors in 1998, manufacturing cars for both makers into the Chinese market. SAIC, like GWM, have been selling vehicles in Australia for a number of years now, but under a number of more familiar brand names. In 2007, SAIC acquired the holding company that owned the MG brand name, and thus became the main producer of MG vehicles. Then in 2010, SAIC also acquired the van manufacturing arm of the British truck manufacturer Leyland DAF. The van manufacturing arm of Leyland was known as Leyland DAF Vans, or as we know it here in Australia, LDV. LDV became the brand that SAIC sold their pickup utes and vans under here in Australia and into other export markets. As part of the LDV acquisition in 2010, SAIC also picked up the Maxus brand from Leyland, and it is now commonplace to see the same SAIC vehicles sold as either a Maxus vehicle or LDV vehicle in different markets, depending on what the market is most familiar with. BYD consists of 4 brands, but as of now, only 2 are confirmed for the Australian market. BYD, the brand itself, has been operating here for some years now, and Denza, BYD's premium brand, has been confirmed for entry into Australia in 2025. There are 2 other brands that BYD manufacture, and those are Fangchenbao, their dedicated off-road vehicle brand, and Yangwang, their super luxury car brand. No confirmation as yet on these brands, but it's expected that vehicles of these brands in China would be sold under the Denza brand in overseas markets. Now, if you're a regular to Beyond EV, then BYD requires no introduction. For a full, comprehensive look into the history of BYD, I would highly recommend watching the very first video I uploaded to Beyond EV called Who is BYD? It provides an in-depth chronological history of BYD from its beginnings all the way to today. But if you haven't watched that video yet, then no problem. BYD is a privately owned business started in 1994 by Wang Chuanfu, a metals researcher with a specialty in battery chemistry. BYD started as a battery manufacturing company, producing batteries of various chemistries for a variety of applications. Their big breakthrough came in the early 2000s when BYD formed partnerships with Nokia and Motorola to be the OEM battery manufacturer for their mobile phones. This then allowed BYD further insight into the mobile phone manufacturing business, and they started manufacturing electronic parts and boards for mobile phones as well. It had been Wang Chuanfu's vision to manufacture cars powered by batteries his company developed, and it was in 2003 when they made their first strides to do so. Following their float on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange the year prior, BYD purchased a failing state-owned car manufacturing business, and in 2005 their first car came off the line, which was just a stock standard internal combustion engine car. But just 3 years later, BYD released their first car to feature a BYD battery pack, the BYD F3 DM plug-in hybrid. Fast forward to 2025 and you can see how BYD's history as a battery manufacturer has given them the competitive edge on the competition, as they are now the largest car manufacturer in China, hands down. But not only in China, they are also the largest new energy car manufacturer in the world, new energy taking into account both plug-in hybrids and full electric vehicles. At the end of 2024, BYD now sits as the third largest car manufacturer in the world, selling 4.28 million vehicles in 2024. That's just 900,000 less than Volkswagen Group in second. BYD have had a stellar start to 2025, so it will be interesting to see where they sit at the end of this year. So, there you have it, a crash course into the history of China's major car manufacturers, some of which you may have not even heard of yet, but will likely see on the roads sometime in the next couple of years. But I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Which of these brands are you looking forward to the most in the coming years? Or is the jury still out there for you and you're not quite ready yet to purchase a Chinese-made vehicle? If so, I'm interested to hear your reasons why. Let me know down in the comments. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're new here, consider subscribing to Beyond EV for more BYD related content. I've got plenty more videos headed your way. That's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.